Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live online conversation with John Prendergast. I'm Grace Bubeck, and this is a conversation in the series of Living from Love, which is a series of both live online conversations, events, and sorry, I'm just needing to, okay. Needing to turn off the volume of the YouTube feed. Yes, where was I? It's a series of online events, live online events. There are live conversations, there are live events, and also live retreats, weekend retreats, which tend to be longer Saturday, Sunday events. And there's probably one coming up end of November. So if you're interested in these events, you can join the mailing list on the Living from Love website. You'll find the website address in the info underneath the YouTube event. So let me introduce John to you. Hi, John.
Hi, Grace.
John Prendergast is actually teacher, psychotherapist, and spiritual teacher who participated in the very first live online retreat that we did almost 2 years ago now. That was on healing and awakening. That was the theme. And I had invited John because he had edited 2 volumes of books that were about the meeting ground between psychotherapy, which is a healing modality, and non-dual approaches, non-dual teachings. So that's how I came to be aware of John, and I just found his energy very beautiful, and there's something very embodied and very heartfelt about his presence, and at the same time it's very deeply grounded in truth, in the truth of being. So I very much appreciated our first conversation, and I just wanted to invite him back because he's just published a book called In Touch, and it's his life work, how to tune into the inner guidance of your body and trust yourself. But actually, you know, I don't know about that subtitle, John. I guess it's good. It's good for selling the book, but I feel it doesn't do justice to the contents of the book.
It's true.
Which are so, which are so deeply imbued with truth, with non-dual truth, with ultimate truth. Mm-hmm. And, it just sounds like another self-help book. So I just want to say, if you see that subtitle, don't be disappointed by it or put off by it. The book is actually really very wonderful. I can very highly recommend it.
Just a comment about that. I'm glad you mentioned that because I wasn't happy with the subtitle either.
Yes, I bet you weren't.
I had suggested, the sense of inner knowing, for instance, as a subtitle. But Sounds True, who are wonderful publishers and a wonderful editor, they want to get a hook to sell books. And yes. So, they want a how-to book. And this is not really a how-to book. This is really about a deep listening and opening to our truth and living increasingly in accord with that.
Actually, yes, it is. And it is also a how-to book. And you know what? I would say, John, because I've been thinking of writing a book, a non-dual self-help book, a non-dual how-to book, which would be interesting to do because it's really it's two genres that don't kind of seem to meet somehow. But what I found interesting about your book is that it's full of invitations or experiments. I can't remember how you call them. To actually listen, to go into the felt sense, into the felt experience of what is here or what comes up in response to certain questions. And so in that sense, it's actually extremely practical. And, to me, is a reflection also of the work, the very practical work you do as a psychotherapist with people. So you're in that meeting ground, between the how-to and the truth. And I found the book just really beautiful in terms of how it navigates that meeting ground, because there's so many books, non-dual books written that are very, that express truth and invite the reader into truth. But that don't give a how-to, which is fine. I mean, some teachings are like that, but to actually have something to do can be very helpful for people, especially when they come across those teachings for the first time, or are relatively new to them. And, even Ramana Maharshi had the famous "Who am I?" question, so that was a how-to too.
Yeah, there's a role for practice, isn't there?
Yes.
And it's certainly true for beginners, to begin to orient more to what's more deeply true, and it can be true for well along on the spiritual path. And it is true, my work is a kind of hybrid. I'm interested in bridging more conventional psychotherapeutic work, which works a lot with getting in touch with feelings and examining your beliefs, and more traditional spiritual approaches, which are kind of direct pointers to true nature. And where's that that intermediary realm where we're working intimately with our own experience, right? And not distancing from it and not getting lost in it, but able to use it as portals to actually experience our deepest nature.
Yes, and in that's what I find so beautiful about the book and about the work that you do, that you're looking for that bridge, and for that portal in actual experience, because non-dual teachings can be just very separated off from everyday experience. So, people go to retreats and, they're in that satsang space, and satsang energy is not quite the right word, but they are in truth with each other. But then they come back to their lives, and that's where people tend to need help, because there can be very deep insights during retreats, during satsangs, and then there's this question of, well, how is that lived? How is that truth that has been experienced, how is that lived? And that's where the bridge becomes important, because when experience, any experience can be a portal, as you put it, then
This is it.
there is no problem with life, you know.
We're not dualistic in our lives. We haven't split ourselves between our ordinary life and our life in meditation, so-called, or on retreat, or in satsang. Our life becomes the meditation. Our life becomes the satsang as well. And it's just been so interesting to me working with people for as long as I have, both in psychotherapy and spiritual mentoring, to discover again and again, if people are willing to be intimate with their experience, and sometimes that can require a lot of courage, and a lot of affection and a lot of curiosity. But if they do, it's like again and again, the experience opens up. It's like, in the heart of the contraction, there's space. And it's just, it's been beautiful to not approach this in a philosophic way or abstract way, but actually to be very intimate with your experience. And to find that. And this is true for people who have no spiritual orientation as well.
Yes.
So it's very beautiful. It doesn't require a philosophic framework to discover this. It's native to us.
Yes, well, it is who we are.
It is who we are.
And it's always so. Well, there's just something in us that wants to discover this. So, we can count on some kind of cooperation.
The truth in us loves the truth.
Yes. Yeah.
And resonates with it when we feel it in ourselves and in others. I mean, this was kind of the main point of the book. Actually, the reason I wrote it was because the body has a sensitivity, to what's true and what's authentic. And it's often overridden by the noise of conditioning, but it's there. And when we learn how to listen, they become, like pointers to who we really are. And I find this fascinating. That the body can be, very at effect of our beliefs and our reactive feelings. But as those, as those clear somewhat, or if we have peaceful moments, there's a profound sensitivity that is available to us and allows us to open into wisdom and love.
Yeah. And that's exactly why I wanted to speak to you, John, because it is that how do I put this? To see the body and our humanity not as a problem, but actually as that portal. Not as a viewpoint, not as a perspective, but much more deeply than that, is actually part of the healing of the human condition, and also part of the healing of the spiritual searching. Because the spiritual searching often is something that kind of takes off and wants to get away from human suffering. So all that is our humanity is implicitly rejected, is kind of pushed aside. And so there is when that it's so healing to realize that it's not a problem. It's just what got us to look for deeper truth. And it can always be found right there. We don't have to take off into some spiritual purity to find it.
This is the difference between a spiritual approach that's solely transcendent and focuses on formless awareness, and a spirituality that acknowledges that transcendental, open, formless, infinite awareness, but also prizes and values its expression in form, which is immanence, isn't it? So this is an approach of immanence. This is an approach that recognizes the body as an expression of source, a beautiful expression, an expression of beauty and creativity. And so all of our bodily and human experience, this is a word that you use, is embraced, is welcomed, and then can transform and transmute and orient, to its source as well, because there is a transformational process that happens on the level of thought, on the level of feeling, on the level of sensation, as we attune with being, I would say. And as that radiance becomes more and more foreground in our awareness, it's transformative if we allow it. If we're honest and vulnerable enough to allow that. And I think this is the movement. This is the evolving edge, I would say, of the introduction of what are initially contemplative and renunciate teachings, mainly from Eastern traditions, and an integration into a creative and alive expression in our ordinary lives. And our ordinary lives are so important, not to split off, not to devalue as well.
Yes.
Because normally we dismiss the body, we devalue it in some way. We don't really listen in a deep way. And the body's not what we think it is, or it's not only what we think it is. It has this, remarkable sensitivity.
So let's get into this topic of the body, John. If you were to put what you have to say about the body in just a few sentences, what is it that you really, why is the body even worth taking seriously?
Well, try
because
living your life
as the traditional teachings go, we are not our bodies, which is true. And then with that, the body is dismissed. That's the end of looking at the body.
I would add one little qualifier to that statement, which is we are not just our body.
Yeah.
Right. And that makes a huge difference, because now we're not dismissing, we're actually embracing the body, and yet we know we're so much more. We're expanding, right? We're opening to both deeper and wider dimensions of who we really are. And just that little word, we're not just our bodies, we're not only our bodies, really, that view really makes a big difference about how we approach our experience of our body as well. And it's so important because spirituality is not abstract. It's something that we need to live in our ordinary life, and we need to, in a certain way, feel in our bones. I'm speaking metaphorically now, but you know what I mean. We feel it viscerally, palpably, in the core of our being. And our body is a vibrant field of awareness and sensitivity as well. And so how can we not live with that and feel like feel complete or more fulfilled as well? Because otherwise we have a kind of somewhat dissociated life, and a certain dryness of our life as well. And it doesn't need to be that way.
So, John, I think that's a good time to actually invite all of us into one of your exercises, I will practices, or invitations,
Hmm.
experiments,
Okay,
felt
something
sensing.
something experiential.
Yeah,
Okay.
so why don't we do that right now?
Did you have something in particular in mind?
No, not particularly. I'll leave that up to
Hmm.
you, John.
Okay. Well, we'll experiment. We'll see what comes. Okay.
Okay.
Because I never do. I don't have rigid protocols here. Um,
Nor do I, John. So I'm happy to go along with whatever comes through you.
okay. All right. So we'll just take maybe 5 or 10 minutes with
Yeah.
you and your listeners, and just do a little exploration and sensing,
Mhm.
and feeling into the body. So um, I invite you. Generally, it's easier with eyes closed, but you and your viewers are welcome to keep your eyes open. We'll take a few deep breaths and feel your body, the weight of your body in chair or sofa or floor. And just let yourself be held. So often we're trying to hold ourselves up so we can relax a little bit. And feel your attention dropping down. It's like your center of gravity gets lower in the body. Feeling your chest, your abdomen, your hips, your legs, upper and lower, and feeling the bottoms of your feet. It's a very sensitive area of the body. The bottoms of your feet and the palms of your hands. Relaxing, letting yourself be held. And I invite you to feel the vibrancy of the body. You can feel it in the hands and the feet, almost like we have a layer of energy within our hands and our feet, subtle energy, a subtle aliveness. And just feel that spread up your forearms and up your lower legs, upper arms and shoulders, and into your hips, back and chest, lower back and belly, your neck and your face. Eyes are relaxed, and so too the ears. Both hemispheres of the brain relaxed. Just feeling a lightness inside your body. There may be areas of constriction or numbness, but notice if there's a lightness and a sense of space as well. We normally imagine the body is very dense, but in fact, it's very spacious. Feeling the space, sense of alive energy in the interior body, And then begin to feel the space around your body. First in front. And this is really more of a feeling. It's as if this lightness and energy and spaciousness actually extends out in the area in front of your body. Just notice, it's not inhibited by any objects. So a sense of growing space in front of your body and also behind your body. This is an area we often don't pay attention to. So we're feeling into the background space. And as you feel space behind and space in front, just notice if there's any limit to the sense of space. Not a conclusion, just a question. Feeling the space on the left side of the body. And then on the right side. Sometimes just by imagining breathing into and from that space, it becomes more lively. Space on the right. Feel the space beneath your body. Again, as if breathing up from below and back down into the depths. So the underground space, and then the overhead space, the heavens, the sky. Just feel the vastness above you. And then sensing that space all around now. Space all around, extending infinitely, and then space inside your body. And notice if there's any difference between apparent outer and inner space. Is there a meaningful boundary in this sense of spacious aliveness? And just notice what happens to your sense of the body. Not trying to change anything, needing anything to be different. Often we begin to feel it more as more like a cloud of energy, less defined, more open and alive. And then just notice if there's any area in your body that's wanting attention. An area that feels numb or constricted. And just gently bring your attention there. Not trying to change anything, but just being more intimate with whatever's wanting attention. Perhaps gently breathing into the core, whatever that sensation may be, with an attitude of affectionate attention, warm welcoming and curiosity, with love, and without an agenda to change, just a desire to be intimate with your experience. And just take a minute with that, and then we'll end up. a little bit after that. So from that sense of openness and lively space, we meet some area that is not feeling spacious, not feeling very alive. We meet it gently, with curiosity and affection, with breath. And with a willingness for it to be just as it is. And just notice what happens. And an interesting question that you can ask yourself is, what's in the very center of this? What's in the very core of this? And then let the question go. Don't think about it. It's like dropping a pebble in a pond. We let it go, and we just notice if there are any ripples in the way of sensation or feeling or perhaps an image. So we're entering into communication with some parts of ourselves that are wanting to be liberated, to be met with love and understanding. We enter humbly with a deep listening. Okay, beautiful. So don't rush to open your eyes or come out. Actually take, 10, 20 seconds. Feel your body, feel the sense of space. And then just notice what happens when you open your eyes, because when we open our eyes, there's a flood of information into the system. So do it slowly. You may open your eyes a little bit, close them again, open them again, and then gradually bring your attention out.
Thank you, John. That was very relaxing, very interesting for me. Maybe I'll just share that with you and everybody else. I found that there was a real pull into what was below the body, So it was a real pull into the ground of that, or whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a realization that so much of my life has been spent in the heavens, opening to the heavens. And still relatively little time, comparatively, has been spent opening to the body. And so that became very clear. That became very clear to me. And it was interesting, to see that, to feel that so clearly, and to realize that maybe there's something there that's calling me to feel more into that immanence.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. And this is, this is the area that we have, for those of us who have been on the spiritual path for many years, this is the area of the greatest resistance, actually, is opening to the ground, I would
mm,
say. It's like for attention to fully drop down and into this human experience that can feel very vulnerable.
mm,
And also, as attention drops into the body, we're going often to earlier developmental experiences as children when we may have felt unsafe and unwanted as
mm,
well. It's like, I don't want to be here,
mm.
in this body. It doesn't feel safe. Um,
Yes.
I don't feel welcomed. Um, and so we find, we cope, we adapt. And if we have a spiritual inclination, there's going to be a movement this way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is fine because, I mean, there's something really genuine in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you know, if we're going to really live this in an embodied way, we have to include our multidimensionality as a human being. And so for many years for me, just like you, Grace, my attention was just pulled down. There was a period of about 10 years, of just, it felt like a drilling down, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and sometimes quite arduous, I would say. I think it's important for viewers to know that this is not an easy journey, and often there are wonderful benefits of bliss and love that are advertised, but the path requires often difficult encounters,
Yeah.
walking through resistance and terror as well. And yet the rewards are enormous because as we deepen into the ground, we feel a profound sense of stability as
Mm.
well. That's less and less dependent on any circumstance,
Yeah.
right? And it's like the body is actually opening to its true nature as unbounded spacious awareness.
Mm.
And identification happens at all sorts of levels. It can happen on a mental level, an emotional level, and an instinctual level.
Yeah.
And so these emotional and instinctual levels are wanting to be freed, wanting to be liberated as well.
Mm.
And that's why I would say my story about your experience,
Mm-hmm.
there was a call,
Mm.
down and to deeply feel and be with what's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, John, I mean, as you say, I'd say two things. I mean, I'm aware of my own experience of coming into this world as being very jarring for me,
Mm-hmm.
the light was too bright and there was too much noise, like everything seemed so loud. And I wasn't cared for in a physically very gentle way.
Yeah.
So the body was never really very comfortable and didn't feel held, didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
cared for. And I've been aware of this for the longest time. And there's been a lot of healing around this in both through body work, receiving body work,
Uh-huh.
and psychotherapy also.
Mm-hmm.
But it's as if the there's deeper and deeper layers of that get revealed
Exactly.
and get liberated that way. And my
Mm-hmm.
sense is that the deepest layers are actually not even to do with this individual human experience. They're actually to do with the animal, like you said, instinctual
Mm-hmm.
um, conditioning that's there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, I mean, it's a collective experience. It's a collective consciousness
Mm-hmm.
of being basically in survival mode.
It's about survival. Exactly.
Yeah. And so these days I'm just very aware of more of the collective aspect of this, because it doesn't even seem to be individual anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting point. We could speak of it as archetypal or collective, or collective as well. Certainly, it's existential in the sense that it's part of the shared human experience,
Yeah.
and not only human, right?
Yes,
But
absolutely.
any creature from a single cell amoeba, is struggling to survive, to keep a boundary, to avoid painful experiences, to have pleasurable experiences. It's just built in to a biological organism, you know. And so, as human beings, we're participating in this with, increasing awareness. But it's something we share really with all creatures as
Yes.
well.
Yes. And
And
it's,
and
yeah.
also we may be carrying a lineage from our family, from our parents, from our grandparents, from our great grandparents, from various, traumas that have happened collectively and have been passed down as a kind of psychic heirloom as well. So in that sense, it's not necessarily individual either.
Yes.
There are different streams of conditioning, in other words. Some are more personal and individual, and others are not. Some may appear to be from past lives. Not that I'm saying past lives exist, but they appear to be as well. That's interesting. Fairly rare, but that comes up as well.
Yes. Yes. Actually, I mean, past lives came up for me as part of my healing, whatever healing happened in my life. So I don't doubt that can come up. And so did family, family kind of heritage. But this, I mean, my sense of my own, where things are at, for me, is really that they're really at this very instinctual, very creaturely level. And what came to me as you were speaking was this image from the Bible. I can't remember where this is, but it says somewhere, when the lion shall lie down with the lamb, something like that. And it's interesting because it speaks to the liberation of that very instinctual conditioning that we share with animals, that we have to be afraid of each other. Because, this other person might kill us, or this other animal might kill us. And so to go beyond that conditioning and realize there is a shared ground there. There's a shared awareness that expresses in these different forms.
And we need that lion, we need that power actually to function, in our lives as well. And the more in touch with it we are, the more empowered we are as well. And with that metaphor of the lion and the lamb, I think of the lamb as that kind of innocence of the heart as well, and the lion is that kind of fierce protective energy, and the heart will not be at rest if there's not a strong foundation as well. So it's such a rich theme, this whole theme of security as well.
Yes.
And not just physical security, because it's not as if when we awake, we're free of biological fear. I don't think that's true. But what does happen is fear of the separate self falls away. And so a lot of our fear is social, in terms of,
yes.
what do you think of me? Are you going to like me or reject me? And there's a lot of fear of abandonment or psychological attack also that feels very, very instinctual. So that's not what you're describing, but
No.
that's what a lot of people experience as well. So I just
Yes.
wanted to mention it.
Yes, yes. I mean, both are there.
Mhm,
There's the fear of the basically the abandonment,
mhm,
which also used to be death.
mhm,
You know, in our more prehistoric and even historic times.
mhm,
Um, but what I was referring to was actually even more literal than you made it out, which is interesting to me, not just at an intellectual mental level, but actually as a real question.
mhm.
Waking up, when waking up happens everywhere, does that include animals? Does that change even the
Mm,
way animals relate to each other?
mm.
Could that mean that the lamb will no longer have to be afraid of the lion? I mean, who knows? I don't know. I have a cat who's a very fierce hunter. um,
Well, I
you
guess
know.
we'll find out. We'll find out what collective effects radiate out from this recognition of who we really are,
Yes.
and living in accord with that in our lives. Certainly, it will affect our relationship to animals, you know,
Yes.
certainly to other human beings, but we tend to be a lot more, connected, interdependent, and kind when we're not taking ourselves as a separate self, right?
Yes. Hmm. And it is a very real question. I mean, Ramana Maharshi had this relationship with a cow who he said was enlightened.
Hmm.
Um, so, this question whether awakening can actually reach into the animal
Hmm.
realm,
Yeah.
and what that would be like. How would that embody? How would that integrate? Um, I mean, just today, just as we're talking about it, seems like a totally fascinating question to me. Hmm. So let me ask you. Actually, there were two questions I had for you from reading your book. One was when you speak of the body, um, and as you were guiding us into this um, sensing into the body, uh, you seem to, there's an interesting link between the actual physical body and the felt sense of it, which is more energetic.
Hmm.
Um, and so my question is, when you speak of the body, do you ultimately speak of that subtle energetic body, or do to what extent does that include the actual physical body?
Yeah, I think the body's multidimensional, and so for me, it includes all of that from very physical levels to very subtle levels as
Mm-hmm.
well. I mean, it is remarkable. It's the body has all these different levels of energy and sensitivity, from very
Yes.
gross levels to extremely subtle levels. And interestingly too, when we really have a deep intuition of who we are, it seems to include everything. So in
Yes.
its most expansive sense, we could say that's our body too. that everything is our body. So, depends on how we want to use the word as well. So we can speak of a mental body, an emotional body, an instinctual body, subtle and gross body, and so on. Certainly in my book, I'm introducing readers to the energy body and, the life current and energy centers and so on, how they relate, to psychological material and also to the unfolding of true nature as well. So all of it.
All of it.
All
okay.
Of it. Yeah.
So maybe my question is then kind of no longer relevant, because the question relating to the body was, when you say the body has an amazing capacity to know truth, and for sure that expresses in the body, because when truth is here, when it's known, there is a relaxation in the body. But is the actual knowing of it, is that more energetic or is that more physical? Because my sense of it would be that that's energetic, the knowing that says yes.
I think that's
felt knowing. Or is that an artificial distinction that doesn't help?
No, I think it's meaningful. That is the felt sense, I would say. That and we should maybe talk about that a little bit. So it is referring to a specific capacity of sensitivity that the American philosopher and psychotherapist Eugene Gendlin coined this term in the early 1960s. This capacity to felt sensing, and that refers to a pre-verbal, holistic sense of something. And he said, and he found that his most talented clients had that natural capacity, but most people either didn't have it, weren't in touch with it, or didn't use it in their work, but they could be taught to access it. So it is a subtle capacity, and it's on the level of subtle sensation, I would say. So we accent the subtlety versus, kind of aches and pains, in the organs and the muscles, which may be in some way related to those subtler contractions as well. So, I think it's a meaningful distinction. And what I thought you were going to ask, Grace, was, does that knowing originate in the body, or is it that the body is sensing that knowing?
Yes, that was part of the question. You put it more succinctly than I did. Thank you.
And I think it's my own understanding of this is that the knowing is actually independent. The knowing, we are that knowing, in a way. Not a knower, not something known. We are that pure knowing. And so our access to that knowing doesn't actually require going through the body or sensing the body. We can have that direct knowing without any kind of sensation at all. And that's a really important point to make. So there's a kind of independence to pure consciousness, I would say. And the body is sensitive to it. And so that becomes another way that helps validate our understanding, which is why I'm accenting this particular point. But I don't want to say that the body is the source of the knowing, but rather the subtle body is sensitive to this knowing, and that sensitivity can be helpful to us, both in terms of our practical lives and also as a pointer to our true nature.
And practically, I think that can be very helpful in the sense that, and that was a kind of follow-on question that I was going to put to you. Often in more healing modalities, what is taught is to kind of move out of the head, out of the mind, into the body. And so basically what happens is that the noise that obscures knowing that stems from the mind
Conditioned body mind.
being busy doing its
Mm-hmm.
thing. That noise tends to calm down, and as it calms down, it's possible to feel more clearly, to sense into these more subtle realms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where knowing can be found. But again, it doesn't originate in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Because in some of what you say, it seems to sound like that's what you mean. But I'm glad to
Mm-hmm.
hear you clarify that as you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's an important point. I think it's a very important point. I'm not sure what more I could say about it, but I would agree. That's the model. Kind of the model I'm presenting is just that kind of, as the body gets quieter, the body mind gets quieter, our sensitivity and our listening is enhanced. And that may include, some of us are just more attuned to the body, and others of us are not. So it's important not to feel like, oh, I can't feel the subtle body, therefore I can't, know who I am. It's not true at all. It's not true at all. But this is just another resource, I would say, as well.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to add to that. When I lead meditation evenings, I may actually I either start with a kind of sensing into the body, because I know that's what allows people to kind of come out of their minds, which is usually where their energy is. Or I will start with a guided meditation that's in the heart, focused on the heart, because again, it has the same effect of allowing the noise to kind of quieten down.
Very much so. Yeah. And as I mentioned in my book, I think a lot of the spiritual journey is really the shift of attention from head to heart as well. That's like the critical step, I would say.
Yes.
To disidentify from our thinking and be able to see our core beliefs and our thoughts as thoughts, and to not take ourselves as our story, and for attention to rest more and more deeply in the heart as well. And I was interested in, that was where I was going to go in our conversation, is to the heart area, because we were going to talk about the subtle body, felt sensing, and love as well. And this is the center of love, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we're most in touch with gratitude and appreciation and love, it's like something deep really awakens, doesn't it? Enlivens in the heart area. And when the heart is awake, we feel this tremendous oneness with life and sense of fullness as well. And yet we protect our hearts and often are unaware of the defenses that we have as well. So to be intimate with our heart area and to sustain, to have the capacity to sustain that open-heartedness is, I think, one of the great invitations we have as human beings.
How do you see that, John? Is that independent of the sensing that's more physical, or does that go along with it? Because, in some ways, coming out of the head and the mental energy allows us to come more into the body and come more into the heart, but somehow they also seem to be quite distinct. And being more aware of subtle energies in the body doesn't necessarily undo the heart's protection and defenses.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that? What's your experience of that? Both in yourself and in clients also.
It may or may not. Very often, the subtle contractions in the heart area are linked to reactive feelings and to core beliefs as well. And so it's not, sometimes it's actually sufficient just to feel a contraction, and of its own, just by being with it and with the quality of affectionate attention and not trying to manipulate anything, it will just of its own kind of flower and open, and we'll feel more open-hearted.
Yes.
However, most of the time, we'll encounter maybe a difficult feeling, such as not accepting or loving ourselves, feeling a deep sense of shame and unworthiness as well. So this is the emotional component of that somatic contraction. And that also needs to be welcomed. Those feelings need to be welcomed as well, to let ourselves actually experience a sense of unworthiness or a sense of shame or a sense of being deeply wounded. I mean, I don't think we're essentially wounded, but on a human level, we feel things, and if we've been badly treated or we feel we've been badly treated, that has an impact in the heart area. So this is kind of the realm. Again, someone can do this on their own, but very often there's a relational piece here. Many of the wounds to the heart are because of emotional abuse or neglect. We felt maybe not honored and not prized, not really loved and accepted growing up, or maybe in significant relationships. So very often it's in the sharing of that and having someone else attune with that and meet that as well, meet that which has not been met, is very facilitative as well. And that depends on the person and their motivation and what they want to do. But this is the realm of effective psychotherapy, I would say, is that kind of someone in relationally deeply listening and attuning, meeting what that is and understanding it, normalizing it, and allowing its expression and eventual release and integration as well.
Yeah.
And just to kind of complete the conversation, very often these residual emotional reactions are very linked to a core belief about ourselves. And unless that belief is examined and questioned, that emotional reaction will resume and its corresponding somatic contraction. So the heart, and this is true of actually other areas of the body, but the heart has many layers to it. And there's definitely a lot of self-concern, in the heart, a lot of the separate self, whether I love and accept myself, and feel worthy in relationship, capable of intimacy and closeness, also capable of autonomy and being able to stand on one's own. These are very deep human qualities, and not qualities, issues, I would say, as well. So sometimes they will spontaneously unpack, on our own, and sometimes, and very often, they'll come up in relationship, maybe with friends and lovers, or if we're working with a therapist, it may come up in that context as well. But it's very interesting when these constrictions, somatic constrictions and emotional reactions and corresponding core beliefs are met and seen through. I have my little mantra, sense your sensations, feel your feelings, and question your core beliefs, and then rest in your natural awareness. And all this is what happens. It's like as we meet our experience in this way, it tends to unpack itself, integrate, and then an inherent radiance, the depths of the heart can shine as well. And this is deeply fulfilling as well.
Yeah.
Inherently meaningful. to feel that gratitude and that appreciation and love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a journey. It's definitely a journey.
Yes, it's what we don't realize is just how deep all this goes and how much, somehow when a life is dedicated to truth, how much will be dredged up from the depths.
It's very true.
It's just it's just endless. I mean, and it's beautiful. I mean, I would not want to change that ever. And what is interesting to me is, I had 10 years of psychotherapy, and there was so much that was liberated then, and there's still more being liberated. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just ongoing, and so, and at the same time, it's like it's so much clearer these days. When things come up, as long as there's space given to those things, they are seen quite easily and they're
This is it.
released quite easily.
This is
It's
it.
not as
Sticky, huh? And contracted.
suffering and contracted and long as it used to be.
Exactly. And you mentioned space. So
Mhm.
we have an increasingly spacious relationship to our relationship, our
Yes,
experience, whatever it is. And that actually, and a less personal. It's intimate, but it's actually less personal.
yes,
It's like an impersonal intimacy, impersonal, spacious intimacy with our experience. And it's just
yes.
then it's more like, the body mind is unpacking its conditioning.
Mhm.
And it is endless, actually.
Yes,
We are deeply conditioned, and that deconditioning process will continue. And we take it less and less personally. You know,
yes,
it's
yes.
not about who I am fundamentally
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
well. And
Yeah.
yet there's a sweetness in our relationship to it. You know,
Yes, yes.
it's like
And how do you see that, John? I mean, are you aware when things unpack through you? Are you aware of what is personal and what isn't? Because I seem to be very aware of that. I like some things are still personal, to do with just patterns of defense that have been there all my life, patterns of protection. Other things just don't seem to be personal.
meaning
Um,
more collective.
More collective or more creaturely, even like I said earlier.
Mhm.
Do you have the same sense, and what is your experience in terms of
Well,
working with people?
I would use a little bit different language because I don't think any of it's personal, but some of it's individual. I think that's what you're referring to.
Yes, that's what I
It
mean.
refers to the conditioning of
Yeah.
this particular body mind.
Yes.
And so, yeah, if I can reframe your question slightly,
Hmm.
increasingly I am aware of that, aware of a collective level,
Hmm.
and also aware of conditioning that's come from other sources, you know,
Hmm.
in my own family of origin, lineage, for instance. So
Yes.
that discernment is getting increasingly clearer, I would
Hmm.
say. And yet, none of it's personal, Yeah,
Yes, I totally agree. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't belong to anyone. It didn't even belong to our parents. That's the interesting thing, and
Yes.
psychologists will say, "Oh, you're carrying your mother's anger or whatever," but it
Hmm.
wasn't even her anger. It's just
Hmm.
something's gotten passed down
Yes.
unconsciously, and once it's met, there's these kind of lineages of emotional patterns.
Yeah.
Once it's met with understanding and kindness, and it begins to dissolve. Very interestingly, there's a liberating effect not only in this body mind,
Yes.
but it feels like all the prior ones too.
Yes.
I have clients report that it's like,
Hmm.
oh my God, it feels like I'm, resolving this for my mother and my grandmother, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lineage of suffering through
Yes.
women,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
various ethnic and racial groups as well. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
how that works, I don't know exactly, but that's what people experience. There's a
Mm-hmm.
kind of letting go that's individual and
Mm-hmm.
beyond themselves as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
it,
certainly my experience too. Mm.
and there's an interesting thing. It's like as this particular body mind is more saturated with awakeness, and I'm not saying this one, but any body mind is.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually kind of a growing sensitivity to the suffering of others.
Yeah.
Again, not knowing, not taking it on as one's own, but
Mm.
just recognizing that it's there,
Mm-hmm.
and a growing capacity of the heart
Mm.
to embrace it as well,
Yes. Yes.
right? To meet it with deep compassion,
Yeah.
and I think that's transformative, you know.
Yes, because as much as there's reactivity and conditioning in relation to self, there is in relation to others.
Hmm.
And as that is seen, where it is seen from eventually is impersonal and
Hmm.
spacious and
Hmm.
loving and compassionate with suffering. So
Hmm.
so it's like it's that compassion arises very naturally,
Quite
you know,
naturally, and
and
it's
very easily.
very
It,
naturally, spontaneously. We're not even trying to cultivate it, you know.
yes, yes,
Even though those practices like metta can be beautiful
mm,
and helpful,
yeah,
but what we're talking about is a spontaneous arising
yes,
from the depths of who we are and from the heart,
mm,
of compassion.
mm-hmm,
It just upwells and pours out quite
yes,
naturally
yes,
without getting overwhelmed, because
mm-hmm,
some people are very sensitive, but they merge, with the
mm,
pain of others, and then they get
yes.
lost in it and overwhelmed, and that's not helpful.
No, and I'd say that's not true compassion. Um,
I would agree.
it's kind of attachment against suffering, you know, that can look like compassion, but actually it's too noisy.
There's an agenda there.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, if I take care of you, you'll take care of me. Often is you'll see that in caretakers, and as children, we can get conditioned into that, to be a caretaker to one of our caretakers, in the hopes that they'll strengthen and
mm-hmm.
return that as well.
Actually, there can be a compassion that isn't driven by that. It's actually driven by suffering being unbearable or feeling unbearable, pain
Mm-hmm.
feeling unbearable. So it has to be somehow, it can't be, it's unbearable when it's felt in others as much as it's unbearable when it's felt in oneself. So it
Mm-hmm.
has to somehow be resolved, it has to be healed. But there's a drivenness
Right, that's right.
in that compassion
Hmm.
that doesn't speak of true compassion.
No, and it reflects, the lack of, as you say, self-compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where self-love and self-acceptance are so important,
Mm.
as human beings. It's like for that piece to come, to fall in,
Yes.
then our experience of others in relationship changes so much. I mean, for
Yes.
one, when we stop the judging here, it's like
Mm-hmm.
all those projections just get pulled right in,
Yeah.
and it's increasingly more difficult to judge anyone, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
It's not like we're trying to stop our judging, which is
Yeah.
more judgment. It's just they naturally fall away, or they don't last very long. We just can't believe them
Mm-hmm.
because we can't believe it about ourselves. You know.
Well, when judgment is clearly seen, it's so clearly not true that you know. can't hold on to it. Because naturally, when it is clearly seen, what arises is just an openness to this, whatever this is. Doesn't have to be a love of it, but there's an openness to that because
That's right. Mm-hmm.
it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an openness to what is. So seeing through judgments, is so important, and so vital, and yet often very difficult for people.
Yeah.
And often there's judging of the judgments, and self-judgment about being so judgmental. And,
Yes.
so one of the things, kind of coming back to the heart, and I know you know this because you've read the book, but I found if we can present our judgments, state them in a very simple way, even write them down, 4 to 7 words, judgments of others, and especially of ourselves, and then bring the attention to the heart area, right? And ask ourselves, what's my deepest knowing? Like we're consulting heart wisdom, and then just being quiet. It's much easier to see through our judgments. It's even a better question than is it true? I find, which comes out of Byron Katie's work.
Yes.
And that can be very powerful work. And I trained with Byron Katie and learned her work many years ago. But I find that is it true question too black or white, kind of binary, and you always know the right answer. You know that it's not true. So the mind can skip through it very quickly and not really see through the judgment. But if attention, the heart is the center not only of love but of great wisdom. And the two together can meet our judgmental mind with much greater clarity and transformative power.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think these days Byron Katie stresses much more the need to not just stay in the mind and to really get very quiet with that question, is it true?
Exactly.
And as you get quiet, the deeper knowing will reveal itself.
This is it. It comes out of silence, right? It's intrinsic. Yeah. So it's beautiful to sit innocently with a question in silence and just wait.
Yes.
Because it can be so surprising, and it doesn't take a long time. But a very important ingredient is that we really want to know that we're a lover of truth. So that motivation is actually the most important thing. Do we really want to know, no matter what?
Yeah.
What's my deepest knowing about this? And that actually gives that question invites a whole range, a much subtler response than a yes or a no.
Yes. Well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting. This is how inquiry can relate to the body as well, and to the heart, right? It's all interrelated. Yeah. Nothing is really separate. So we can feel the love of truth, right? Yes. We can know it directly, and we can also feel it indirectly through the body as well. The call, that deep call of the heart to come home.
Yes.
Right. That longing to come home. That's a call from our true nature.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And invites a deep investigation, of the heart, and egoic levels and soulful levels and collective impersonal levels as well. So the heart is an amazing area of sensitivity.
Yes, and in the online groups that I do, the Awakening as Love groups, that's really inquiry from the heart. And it's very powerful, to allow the heart to be that clear,
Mhm.
And in a space of a group, somehow when people are held in that space of the heart, so much reveals itself, so much
Mhm.
comes up and becomes so clear, so beautifully clear as to what is true and what isn't, what is just a belief, what is
Mhm.
just a conditioning that's there, but it's not true. It's
It's an interesting point, isn't it? The actually the power of a small group or of a
yes.
group,
Mm.
particularly when there's a kind of clear intention
Yeah.
and maybe skillful facilitation. It could be
Mm-hmm.
one person, it could be rotated among the group. Doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. But if there's
Mm-hmm.
that shared intent to
Yes.
really consult the heart wisdom,
Mm.
there's something about being in a group that evokes a different response that being in a
Yes.
large retreat or being by oneself does not.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I run a couple of small group self-inquiry groups,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I've discovered this as well. So very
Yes,
important.
it's like that's really the satsang, I mean,
Mhm.
it's a very personal form of satsang, but it's very powerful.
Hmm.
I find it incredibly powerful,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
people really get a lot out of it.
And this speaks to the again to the collective.
Mm.
It's like to the contagious quality of true nature,
Yes.
and of the
Yes.
heart, that contagious ease, that
Mm.
when I can feel it as I talk with you, Grace, that
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm.
feel this kind of warmth and radiance in your heart,
Mm.
and
Mm.
it invites
Yes.
listeners
Yes.
to discover that in themselves. So here we have the phenomena of resonance,
Yes. Yes.
right,
Absolutely.
of attunement, mutual
Mm.
attunement as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's I think that's why when we gather together, you know,
Yeah.
often there's a more potent field
Yes.
of inquiry and experience as well.
Yes, because the like you say, the attunement, it starts resonating in everybody's heart, and so it gets much more powerful and potent as it would just between two people or with one
Hmm.
person alone.
Hmm.
And that's what's so
Yeah,
powerful.
the sharing of being, as you said,
Mhm.
which is what satsang means, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm. So I wonder whether this is a good place to invite others to come onto the hangout. It's already 3:30, half
Mhm.
past 12 your time. So I just want to say, let me check the YouTube thread whether anybody has posted anything there. So if people want to come onto the hangout, you're welcome to do that now. And if you'd like to post a question on the chat thread, the YouTube, um, yes, I don't see anything right now, John, but there is a person on the hangout. Edward, are you around? Would you like to ask a question? Hello, Edward. I'm not sure he's actually still with us. Okay. Um, hmm. So there's going to be a little lag in terms of, people responding on YouTube or coming onto the Hangout, because we're talking about real time here, seemingly real time.
It's just you and me, Grace.
For now, there's quite a few viewers, but they don't seem to be very chatty so far. Usually there are questions on the YouTube chat space. So let's see. Is there anything that you would want to add to what we've spoken about so far, John? I would have a question, but you can go ahead also if you were going to say something.
just one thing. Just to talk a little bit more about my book, and what inspired it, and what I discovered working with people in terms of felt sensing, is that there's a far reach of felt sensing. When Eugene Gendlin initially described it, it was more oriented towards a sense of a situation or a problem or something that happened in the past. But what I discovered with people is they have a felt sense of who they really are and of their source. And it was so interesting to me as people would begin to tap into this knowing in themselves, there were certain characteristic somatic markers that began to appear. One of them, of course, is the one we've been talking about, is open-heartedness. Like the more in touch with our true nature we are, it's like the more the heart opens. And there were other markers as well that I would often notice, and one is that sense of relaxed groundedness that you touched into during our guided meditation as well. It's like attention, like there's a relaxation in the core, that kind of chronic grip that we hold on ourselves out of tension and out of the fear of being no one loosens, and we feel the tension dropping, and we become more and more intimate with the sense of the ground as well. So it's almost like an elevator of attention, it just would drop down and open up, and it's not as if the ground were something very solid. It's not, but and so one can speak of it as a spacious ground, or even ultimately a groundless ground, non-localized ground. But very often there would be a dropping of attention and a kind of, opening out, down and out. Sometimes people, when that would be dramatic, it would feel like a trap door would open. Or the ground would suddenly give way and there'd be a falling into an abyss. But I would just say, great, relax, And so, you can kind of enjoy the ride, even if you never, find your ground. You're more and more comfortable, as a non-localized being as well. And I noticed people would start like sitting up more and feeling this kind of sense of things lining up inside as they got in touch with their truth. And I would feel it as I would sit with them, which was fascinating. And the last quality, and there are certainly that I talk about, but certainly there are other qualities, is that sense of spaciousness, that just pure openness. And so these are some, not all, but kind of interrelated facets of our sensitivity that let us know that we're honing in on the truth. So we could speak of them as essential qualities, like emotional equivalents would be like gratitude and appreciation. Mental equivalents would be a sense of clarity and freedom. These are all essential qualities. So the somatic essential qualities are this open-heartedness and groundedness and spaciousness and inner alignment as well. We're open. And so these are some, not all, but kind of interrelated facets.
So, Corinne, I just had to mute Corinne. Go ahead. Yeah. Whoops. Corinne, you're very welcome on the Hangout, but I just had to mute you because the mic fit into the audio stream. John, are you still with us? Hello, John?
Oh, I'm here, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for a question from Corinne.
Well, she's left again. I'm not sure that she was meaning to be there.
Okay.
But here she is again. So let's see. Hi, Corinne. Come on the Hangout. But
I have a question.
Yes. So, Corinne, would you have a headset? Because there's a lot of feedback from your mic.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Oh, I'm here, yeah. Yeah. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for.
Oh, okay. So, Corinne, what you need to do is you need to switch off your YouTube, watching the screen on which you watch.
Okay.
But here she is again. So let's see. Hi, Corinne.
Hi.
I
have a question.
Corinne, your YouTube watch screen is still up. You need to close that window.
I'm sorry.
Okay?
Oh, I'm here, yeah. Yeah. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for.
Oh, okay. So, Corinne, what you need to do is you need to switch off.
Some technical difficulties.
Yes. Maybe she'll be able to find how to do this. Corinne, just to say, close the window, the screen on which you watch this broadcast, and come into the Google Hangout without that still running, because that's what creates the echo effect. So let's see whether she'll be able to come back to us. That's the you know, the downside of doing these live things is that somehow sometimes there are these technical glitches.
Just like in life, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Things never go as planned.
Yes. So, John, do you recall where you were before we got into the into responding to Corinne?
Yeah, I was pretty much done, but I was just kind of summarizing the essential somatic markers that I've noticed emerging most frequently when I sit with people, and they get in touch with their truth. And so these are honing signals and homing signals. They're pointing us back to recognizing who we really are.
Yes, yes, yes. Beautiful. And here we have Corinne, and now there's no longer the echo effect. So
thank you.
Welcome, Corinne.
Thank you.
I just had to unmute you. Now you're unmuted. Whoops. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Now you're unmuted. Go ahead, Corinne. Welcome.
The little disruptor. I didn't, I just was practicing my flute and listening in the background because I've just found, John, I've just found your work, and it's very, well, I've heard your name before, and but really just got your book and have listened to a few interviews and find that my whole life, has been really very in tune with, I don't know, just the spirit of life, the essential nature of life. But with regards to being in touch with my body, and I don't know. I guess what my question is coming down to that core question, that what's at the root of it, what's at the root of this feeling, contracted or unable to breathe or express truly. You know, it feels so important to express truly and honestly and accurately.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I get tied up and can't really express myself because it doesn't feel completely accurate and all this jazz. So I think my basic question is, how do I know if it's the right? I feel like it's important for me to get the right question or the right core root. Do you know what I mean? Like lots of images come in, but I think, oh, they're just associations for, you know, thoughts just float around. They just do that. But what is really the core? What is the core, truly?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel, I think it's important. But is it really? I mean, if you're just with what is, I don't know. I'm probably not even saying anything, and I've just disrupted your talk for nothing.
No, that's not true. No, you're saying quite a bit, actually, and your body is saying a lot, too, very interestingly, because when you were speaking, Corinne, it's like you kept pointing here. It's very, like, what's at the root, right? It's very interesting. It's like the mind may be thinking something, but, you know, your actually body is showing the direction of your very deep inquiry, okay? So it's a beautiful inquiry. And what I would say is you don't have to answer it. There is no perfect answer to this. It's like a living answer. And, you know, it can express itself in many forms. The forms that are not it itself as well. But you will feel a sense of depth and aliveness as you hone in on what feels essential. So I'm interested, like your pictures become very tiny on my screen. I can hardly see you.
John, you can click on the
I can
thumbnails, and you can
there
bring
you
her
are.
up
Okay.
on the screen.
There you are. Okay. So if you take a minute, Corinne, and kind of just let your attention drop in to, you know, the core of this, what comes to you if you're not thinking? Yeah, take your time. Yeah, you're touching something now.
Well, I think what stops me a lot is that the need to define things precisely, you know, as I said. And spaciousness is very evident, you know, just in when I just during the day, you know, I just often, okay, you know, yes, here I am aware. And it's clear that there's not a constricted physical form, but there's definitely more solid, there are more solid areas, for sure. And I think maybe what stops me from really opening that up, maybe it's an expectation that it will feel different, or you know, that it's really saying something important.
Okay, so let's try something. Let go of your expectation of defining anything here. Be willing to be completely undefined.
It's that feeling again that I had earlier as I was listening to your talk, that there's so much energy here that I don't know if I can contain it, you know, that it's felt that way a lot, and it feels that way now.
And maybe you don't need to contain it.
Right.
What if you were not to contain it?
I knew you were going to say that, and it's true. That just came to me, that there's no container to contain it. But I don't know if I can bear it, I should say.
It's interesting, isn't it? There's a fear here. Like if I really open to what's essential, can I tolerate it? Can I bear it? Or will it be too much? So that's a question. That's a question to sit with, and you know, you will ultimately be able to, and it may be a process of gaining trust in your capacity, actually, as well. But you will not go mad, and you will not become dysfunctional. You know.
And I believe that, but that has been a fear at times, that I'll just, thus the root of all the addictions and all the, sort of the patterns that have tried to keep that under wraps, that true energy that's really the essence of whatever this particular expression is.
Absolutely, and I can feel that. I feel a beautiful radiance, in you, and that's the core of your being. And trust that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That really, that's it.
That's
Thank
it.
You. Oh.
You're welcome. Yeah, beautiful. You're welcome. Okay.
Thank you, Corinne. Do you have anything else you want to ask or share here?
Oh, I think I could go on for a long time, so it's probably not. I mean, I sure could, but I'd rather listen to John just. But thank you for the offer.
And maybe there's a sadness that needs to be listened to, that keeps showing up. That just, maybe it feels like it would be too much, but maybe it would be very sweet to give it space in your heart.
You're mentioning something I think that many people experience as they begin to explore more deeply into their true nature, which is a deep grief that arises in the heart. And often people are surprised because they're not sure what they're grieving for. They think, is it a loved one that I've, lost, or maybe, some childhood environment. But really the grief is when we abandon ourselves, the deepest grief. And it's very important, if that's arising, to, as you say, be sweet with it, to allow that sadness or that grief and to move and to open. And it becomes a portal, to that open, tender heart that's then able to experience joy as well. So I'm a big believer in allowing grief and letting it move spontaneously, and realizing there is this profound grief that many of us carry for having turned away from our essential nature in order to feel safe and to be approved of. This is a kind of unconscious contract that almost all of us enter into as children. We let go of what's essential in order to survive and to belong. And there's a deep grief there that as we come back to what's essential, we re-encounter. And this is one of the layers of the heart that actually needs to be allowed to unfold as well. And as it does, the heart, the heart center also gains capacity as well.
Yeah. And, I just add to this, there's a grief of it's just a sadness about not all of us being welcome, whatever that is. Maybe an emotion, maybe something that is felt somehow. And it's so healing to finally give that to yourself, to just allow everything to show up just as it is. And to say, here you are, welcome,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is the
And that's
reverse.
how it's released.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And this is the reversal of abandonment, isn't it?
yeah.
It's not so much about finding another to fill the deficit or the hole. It's realizing this quality of attention, this acceptance and welcoming of our own experience, this meeting, intimate meeting, um, is what's really needed as well.
Mm, mm,
So, yeah, if we've abandoned ourselves, we can recover ourselves.
yes, absolutely. And there's nothing as and as sweet and as loving as just that simple willingness to be there
Mhm.
with yourself, with however you feel.
Yeah, so we get out of the old habit of trying to control our experience or project it onto others and control them, you know, so we don't have our experience as
Mm,
well.
yeah.
So it's a letting go of the very strong tendency to try to control and a deeper trusting in in who we really are and in life and in our essential okayness.
Mm.
We don't have to continually be improving ourselves.
And we don't have to get it right either.
No, we never will. What a relief.
Yeah.
For those of us who are perfectionists, that's a great relief, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah,
so thank you so much for bringing this to all of us because you're not the only one, Corinne. It's it's in all of us, that sadness and that need, that seeming need to get it right, and the realization that actually just feeling what is there is getting it right. you know. If there is such a thing as getting it right, which there isn't. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on to this hangout for, just daring to show up. Even that's already an act of love, isn't it? And a willingness to feel, a willingness to be with what is. Even if you didn't know it would go that way.
Isn't it? I don't know if you can hear me, but
Yes, we
can
can
you hear me?
hear you.
Oh, I thought. Okay, good. Um, it's just letting life unfold, and of course, that's clear. That as it just does anyway. But as you just move with what comes up, with what life is unfolding, rather than trying to organize and make it into something, but just letting it be as it is, as you say. Can I just share one tiny thing that's a perfect metaphor, I think, that my friend gave me a morning glory plant. I have a balcony and it's my garden. And so, anyway, it was just a small shoot, so it's growing. And I've noticed that I tried to train it around. The vines are going wild and sort of growing into all the other plants, and it's being really just going wherever it wants. Of course, plants do that; it's natural. But I tried to train it yesterday up a pole that wasn't a living thing. Well, it's a stick, but it's not alive. and the morning glory wouldn't go up that stick. It was so drawn to the living places, you know? Even though they seemed all tangled and weird for it. I mean, you can see it reaching, you know, for these places that are just seem so strange for it to go. But anyway, I guess I don't know what exactly how to state the metaphor, but for me it felt very relevant somehow that you can't force life to be a certain way. It just is. And when you try to, I mean, it's the little vine is still alive where I tried to train it, but it's not flourishing like the others. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a great metaphor, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To trust the natural unfolding, you know, yeah, and flowering.
So on that note, I think we're going to bring things to a close. Thank you for that beautiful image. And you know, the last place where we learn to trust the natural unfolding is in ourselves and what shows up in ourselves. Because that's the most difficult place to trust that unfolding.
The inner garden.
Yes, that's beautiful, and I'm so looking forward to getting into your book and you know, just going through that, trusting. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Making that commitment to just do it. It's not like it's a project for sure, but just really a journey and a discovery, and I'm looking forward to it. So, thank you.
Good.
Oh.
I really enjoy it.
So thank you, Corinne, and thank you, John, for joining me in this conversation. And is there anything that you would like to say to close this from your side?
Well, we have available, all of us, this innate, natural, profound heart wisdom and whole body wisdom. And the more we slow down and tune in and listen, the more available it becomes. The more we act on it, the stronger the pathway becomes as well. So our bodies are really a beautiful resource in terms of finding our way home and living in congruence with who we really are. And beauty is that it's true for all of us. And it doesn't make us special in any kind of way. It frees us from our need to be special and to be natural as well, and to live in an intimate and authentic way. So, and just on a, this is a bit of shameless self-promotion. I do have a website, listeningfromsilence.com, and I do have public offerings, workshops, and retreats. And so if any of your listeners are interested, they can look those up. That's all.
Yes. Thank you so much, John. And just to say, John is in California. Whereabouts in California?
In the Bay Area, north of San Francisco.
Right. So since we have, viewers from Europe and all over the place, they may not be able to come to your local things, but that's why I'm offering these online events, so that they can meet you online. So thanks again, John. I so appreciate your the sweet intimacy and loving kindness that that you express in what you do, and it's just beautiful. And thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and I've enjoyed our conversations very much as well. So, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you too, and thank you to all of us, all of you who are listening. And the enjoyment is very mutual, John. It's just something that feels very natural in talking to you.
Mm-hmm. Likewise.
Very easy. Yeah. And I'll do a little self-promotion myself. I just want to say that I'll be starting another online group this Tuesday, an Awakening as Love group. And if you'd like to find out about that, it's listed on the Living from Love website and also on my personal website, gracebluebeck.com. The online website, the Living from Love website is living-from-love.com. And if you've enjoyed this conversation and you would like to contribute to my continuing to offer these for free, please make a donation on the Living from Love website. Whatever amount you give is welcome. It all helps to continue to cover the costs of offering these online events for free. So thank you very much for joining us. There's more online events coming up in October and November. You'll find out about them on the website. You can also put your name down on the mailing list on the Living from Love website. And be well, and we'll meet again soon. Bye-bye.